So I am recording the meeting. Make sure that if you're wanting to be anonymised, you have them. And we're going to talk about inclusion in the 21st century. So my name is Helen, and I am by trade a special needs teacher and a Senko. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so you will see PowerPoint slideshow. Check that I'm showing the right thing. Okay, fantastic. Keep doing what I wanted. The world of tech.
Right, spot you.
Move myself that way. Okay, so inclusion and technology. We're thinking about 21st century solutions for 21st century challenges. I think that over the next sort of hopefully 20 minutes or so. Oh, it's deciding not to play ball. Oh, that's the badger. Right, so over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sort of my experience, special needs policy, how young people fit into that, and also looking at their identity and the effect that having special needs and that label has on them. And actually, if we give kids access to tech, it can make such a profound difference to their self-esteem and their outcomes as well. We're kind of looking at some of the effects of lockdown because it's been an absolute baptism of fire for people. It's not been an easy switch at all. It's really been quite tricky. Oh, my computer's annoying me. That's what I want. So, a little bit first about my background. I'm dyslexic, so I have a vested interest for myself in kind of making sure that kids with special needs and specific learning difficulties particularly have the right stuff so they can learn. I've been teaching 13 years sort of in various different guises, and one of the things that I was particularly keen, oh, just let somebody into the waiting room. One of the things that I was particularly keen to, oh, 3 more, I think I'm just going to use my waiting room. I don't know if it's good. It's all right, I'm just having a bit of a moment with Zoom. I don't know how to do it. Excuse me, that's 4 chat messages. I will have a look in a moment. Right, so one of the things that I'm quite mindful of amongst all of this is that my PhD was sort of quite a large thing. I got very cross with a lot of government policy that started to be coming round and sort of expecting people to know what to do and for expecting people to kind of be able to just crack on with experiencing special needs support, but there isn't the support in schools. There's not the technology in schools. So I decided to do a PhD, and then whilst I was doing that, I decided to become a Senko. I am now, I've got the piece of paper, so I'm a specialist teacher and assessor as well, so I've really done an awful lot of training. It's quite a full-on process, and I'm in the process of doing some consultation with the government at the moment. The paper should be out. It was supposed to be out in April. It will be out in due course. Coronavirus has had quite a large impact on the timeline for these things. So that's a little bit about me. Special needs and policy, it's a kind of wobbly area. There's been quite a lot of press recently that special needs policy needs a lot of reform. It had been reformed back in 2014, sort of, with pilot studies in 2011 onwards under the coalition. There are 4 broad areas of need. So in speech and language and communications, where you just find kind of expressing yourself or understanding receptive language can be quite tricky, and so it's quite an important one to make sure kids are supported properly, because if you can't speak, if you can't express yourself, it can make things very difficult. Cognition and learning includes things like dyslexia, dyscalculia, general and moderate learning difficulties. It's where taking in new information is tricky. It's where learning is hard for, it can be specific or an
what's happening with these ones? These ones to be kept.
And social and emotional mental health is a very complex area. It can be the root cause of other difficulties, or it can be caused by other difficulties, but it impacts everything. So technology can help in that area, but very often it's much more that kids need somebody to talk to and strategies to help themselves. And sensory and physical needs, it can be things like visual impairment, it can be things like different, oh, the noise is distracting.
Does this one belong to someone else?
We can't hear you. Can you master override? Yes, I can. I can't find the button. Sorry, I just see the messages on the chat. I can't find the button. Bear with me a second. Okay. Mute all. Right, yes, I can. Mute all new participants. Right, so I have muted. Hopefully that should work, and I've also found the chat function. So, education, health and care plans are one of the main areas that are tricky. They have statutory provisions, so what's written in them should happen. No problem, Caroline, I'm just giving you a message, that's all good. So, but they're not necessarily working very well, and technology can be part of that, but it might not necessarily be. SEN policy is in the moment in a real state of flux and tension. So there's a lot of work is going on, and part of the work I've done with government has been around that. So I'm going to move on to thinking about educational outcomes. Now, where young people have special needs, if their needs are met, it can be brilliant. They can go far and achieve exactly in line with their peers. However, and it's a big however, there is a huge attainment gap for young people with special educational needs. There's a gap of 48%, 14% of those with special needs versus 62% of those without special educational needs meet the expected standards of reading, writing, maths and English in primary schools. And so that discrepancy is 48%. It's nearly half of the kids with special needs don't make the same amount of progress that you expect versus their peers, and it's just heartbreaking. And then so that's when they're at primary school. By the time they're 16, that gap has increased, and their attainment aids, so their overall attainment is just hugely impacted. And quite often special needs coincide with things like levels of poverty, trickiness at home, which is a kind of double whammy of difficulties for young people. They've got to overcome tricky circumstances at home. They've got to overcome a learning difficulty. And within this, then, there's a policy that's not necessarily doing what it was hoped it would do at the time. And one of the most bleak findings was I found a report by from the Ministry of Justice that said 36% of people in prison in 2012 had disabilities and special and learning difficulties versus about 14 to 15% of the school population, so it's more than double. And a report from the Independent found that in 2019 children in prison were twice as likely to have special needs as their cohorts, their peers outside of prison. So it's bleak. We need to get support for young people right, and I think a key bit of this is to do with young people's identity. The work I've done, and this is sort of the more academic levels of work, is that identity is founded in kind of young people's own internal reasoning and sense making of their needs, their experiences in the classroom. So if somebody's labelled dyslexic, actually it can be quite empowering versus being labelled thick or lazy or unattentive, because if you take these things in your internal self, you find it difficult. You're gonna not have a very positive self-concept. This positive self-concept or not positive self-concept then impacts in your interactions, so this kind of the interactional level, where you're talking to other people and how you engage with other people in their roles and how you see each other. And if you're seen as lazy, thick, unattentive, can't be bothered by a teacher, that interaction isn't going to be as positive. Whereas if young people have support so that they know if they've got a difficulty, teachers can make that adjustment. Teachers should be making the adjustment anyway, but we don't always get it right as a profession, we're human. But if they have that support to build a positive concept of themselves, their interactions with others are more positive. And as you work through from an individual level up to your interactions with people, then your interactions with institutions, so your thoughts about school in general, your thoughts about the world of work, your thoughts about life and dealing with other people can be a lot more positive. Now, kids don't want to have a TA sat next to them. A Velcro TA can be soul destroying. It's really hard. It makes it really difficult to get on with life and to kind of build them up. So where a scribe might have been a thing sort of a few years ago, or somebody sat next to them reading out for them, it can be a little bit depressing because it makes you stand out. What kids really like is to be able to be independent. They want to be able to just crack on with their work, not stand out, and hold the key to their own disclosure of any need they might have. And actually, technology here is so powerful. If you give young people tech, they feel empowered, they feel independent, because they don't need to say, "Miss, help me," or "Can you just read that word for me?" Because some form of tech can do that for them. It empowers them, and that builds their confidence, it builds their capacity to view themselves as a strong, independent learner, which then positively impacts their relationships with others and positively impacts their progress, because they can just crack on with their work. They're not held back because they can't read a word or because they find it tricky to write. They can just get on. Tech can be so empowering. I speak from experience. Last night I was zonked. Outlook read my emails to me. So it is huge. It's absolutely huge. So ICT is a hugely important thing. I'm absolutely a massive fan of using what people have got. Now, it comes with a caveat of safeguarding. Safeguarding has always got to be top concern. But where kids in school are allowed to use a smartphone or a tablet, the note-taking process is hugely different. Their capacity to be able to snap a shot of the board, take a picture of a diagram in a book, as opposed to having to labour to do that process from the board to the book, from the board to the book. It's exhausting. I speak from a place of experience, and from myself as a dyslexic person, I was always scrabbling to try and get things down. And from seeing young people in the classroom and with my professional head on, being able to take a photo makes life so much easier, notwithstanding safeguarding and just making sure well-being is in place. Computers, word processors, or a tablet, so that kids can just type. They don't have the stress of holding their pen like there's no tomorrow. And absolutely, and I've just seen a comment, Amber, I'll address that shortly, absolutely exhausting themselves trying to write. Absolutely, having a computer means you can just crack on. And I think where technology is an accepted norm in a classroom, which I will address shortly as well, if there's many kids who use a word processor or some sort of tablet device have it, it becomes a norm, and again, kids don't stand out. Amber's just said we had issues who didn't want to, yeah, and it's exactly that. And I understand Amber's written about kids not wanting to stand out, and this is where I'm thinking that it's a bigger issue. Reader pens are really handy as well, because they're quite subtle little things from I've forgotten the name of the company. There's a company that does e-reader pens, and they're based in Seend in Wiltshire, and they're brilliant. They can use them in exams. They're really subtle. They're the size of a normal pen. They're fab. E-readers and Kindles, you can just really subtly have a little headphone in, safeguarding and trust and discretion notwithstanding. And things like on the school computers, spelling supports are brilliant. There are so many different apps you can get, and just within the Microsoft Office speech packages, they're brilliant. Last night I was knackered. Outlook read my thing out loud to me, and it transformed my experience of dealing with it. Schools have Microsoft Office. They have a lot of things on iPads that are accessible and free, so there's not the expenditure. There is actually, however, a huge potential barrier to tech, and it's about the cost and the impact of that technology on learning and progress, and who foots the bill. So there is technology in the little green bubble. You can see things like mobile tech, smartphones, web processors, laptops, and also one-to-one interventions where there's a member of staff who's giving input to a kid. These are all really potentially very high impact psychologically, but they're high cost. And it's really, really, really tricky, especially in current climes where schools have just got not very much money. It's hard for them to kind of make that call as to what do we do. And who foots the bill is a really big question, because we have to be mindful of things like the Equalities Act. We have to be mindful of exam access regulations. We have to also be mindful, and I have a quotation from somebody who I'm in the middle of some work, we have to be mindful of the impact it can have on young people. I have a parent who spoke of their child, and they said it gives him freedom to use a tablet PC. to do the things he wants to do and to let us know what they are. So there's such a difficult balancing act for the physical apps, the physical hardware, as to the impact it can have versus the cost of it versus the logistics of making it safe with safeguarding considerations. And it's not an easy question to answer. I think it's things we need to think about, the resources that schools and individuals have, before we can't proclaim there is a solution and a way to do it. And funding, who pays for tech? Now, I am a big fan of everyone gets a device in schools. I think it was Rwanda has done it, where every child gets a device, and the literacy levels, I have a friend who's a consultant who researches this, the literacy levels, the accessibility for young people in Rwanda, it's been fantastic as a system. I know we had a few years ago iPads and things like that, and it seemed to die a bit of a death, but I think with COVID-19 the digital divide has really been highlighted again. Who pays for it? Now, the difficulty around this is school budgets are tight. Some parents have money, some parents don't. We are seeing this now with the trickiness that COVID-19 has come to mind. And exams access arrangements. Schools are bound by JCQ, the Joint Council for Qualifications. They're bound by regulations, and we have to maintain exam infrastructure. Now, I am a big advocate, and part of my recommendations for the DFE, hopefully that will come through, are some work with JCQ to make tech make it easier to implement tech in exams, but it's how to do that. I think I would advocate an expectation that kids can use any tech they want. We need to look at the how. And again, linked to funding, linked to access arrangements, is IT infrastructure, because there is so much out there. If kids, all 1,000 kids in the secondary school bring in their computer and hook up online, got to be monitored, and it's got to be feasible and manageable. And alongside that, then staff need to know how to support that as well. So there's a huge array of work that I think needs to be done, particularly given what's going on at the moment, because some kids aren't going to be back in school in September with the best will in the world. It's not going to happen because they're poorly, they might need to shield, so much going on. But they need to have access to technology so that as and when they do go to school, there's not a complete mismatch between what they've been doing at home and what they've been doing at school. It's an important gap to bridge. I think there is no time like the present. With lockdown, we have seen some outstandingly good distance learning. Some, not all. We've seen some absolutely wonderful homeschooling where parents are resourced through digital means and through physical means and time to support their children. And some live lessons have been brilliant, but some schools, and my own notwithstanding, we've not to use video. It's policies that we're not allowed to do video lessons, totally understandably. So it's kind of what we need to be doing now is we need to be embedding flexibility, blended learning, because it's accessible, it's recordable. You can record it, you can go back to it, you can look at ways of keeping kids engaged and providing some fantastic resources for them using technology. Things like Show My Homework, class charts, you can set assignments, and the beauty of them is you can go back to them, you can look, you don't have to be writing frantically. Even if the only tech a school uses is Show My Homework, it means at the end of a lesson, a young person isn't going, trying to write like 10 to the dozen. I've been that child, it's exhausting. Things like Teams, if somebody's poorly, if somebody can't access everything straight away, oh, my slides moved. It just makes it easier, but this is what we're struggling with. Not every person can buy their own device. Not everyone can access it, and even if they've got the money, they might not necessarily have the means to support their children as in their own knowledge as a parent. Some kids are struggling at the moment with lack of face-to-face input. I understand that. We've got that current issue at school. Parents, students, teachers, we need training. There is so much noise coming out of government at the moment, and hopefully it will be acted upon, that we need upskilling. We need to have those skills built in. There's 2 weeks left this term. I don't quite know how much can get done in that time. There's a lot of things going on at the moment. but it's an area we need to develop, because I don't write by hand at work. So rarely. The world is online, the world is typed. I don't write letters physically to parents. We type, we use technology. I scribble on my tablet, I take photos of things. I do that myself. So why am I expecting my children to write? We should be moving with the times. And I think moving forward, really important areas as schools, as trainers, as professionals. I train my teachers at my school about working with young people with dyslexia. We need to think about access to ICT. We need to think about training and really carefully consider for each setting, because there is no one answer for this. There is no this tech is good. There's the look at each setting and think about what resources there are, what needs kids have, and what would work for your setting so that you can get tech right. Oh, my thing's moved. And I think future-wise, it's bridging that homeschool gap, and it's looking for your setting. This is kind of, rather than saying what you should do, it's the questions you need to ask yourselves. It's thinking about, for your school, what would make kids feel better, because there's a couple, there's a couple of comments on here where kids get distracted by having a tablet. So for those kids, it might not be the best thing. There are some schools having a tablet might be perfect. It's thinking about, sorry, Zoom's just spoken to me. Thinking about your training for your teachers. There's 4 areas of learning and special needs difficulties. So what are the areas in your school that work? And it's thinking about using what you've got. Microsoft Office has got so much. It will talk to you, it will listen to you, it will make the background a different colour. I have very deliberately on this PowerPoint used relatively dyslexia friendly fonts, a nice pastel background. It's not black on white, it's not Times New Roman font, it's round. There's quite a lot of space around the words. It's little things like that through technology you can just make stuff that little bit more accessible. And considering access arrangements, I think I will spend the next few years bugging JCQ and looking at what can be done. That's an area I'm really focused on, because we need to look at how we can bridge that homeschool gap with the child's normal way of working. If they use a computer to do their work at home, or if they use a tablet to take their notes, we need to be able to help them to do that in school, in homework, in exams, so they can flourish and be their best self, whatever that would happen to be. If you want any references, there are a few at the end of these slides. There's probably a lot more on my hard drive as well. But that's my slideshow done. Oh, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask? So there was a couple of things. Everyone seems to have different opinions on dyslexia friendly fonts. I hate Comic Sans. I hate it, but that's personal choice. I just don't like it. The thing with dyslexia friendly fonts, if I call it, is the serif. So dyslexia friendly fonts don't have the serif. So if you look at something like Times New Roman, you've got the little kick from one side and a kick on the other. It's where the letters kind of merge into the next one. Things like Verdana, Arial, I like Calibri, Comic Sans, because they don't, that each letter is an independent letter. It doesn't have the little joiner, the lead in to the next letter. It separates them, and it just makes it easier to read. Quite why, I don't know. I think it might be to do with sort of processing the individual shapes. I don't like Comic Sans, but that's because I don't like it. But the nice thing about Comic Sans is the A is like the one you taught to write. So that is much of a muchness. I'd just say without a serif. Is there any other questions? Ooh. I must say though, I think also, I just sort of go back to this thing here. It says all our school have tablets, but we have an issue where SEND students get distracted with games. It's a really difficult one, that one, because if they're online games, oh, okay, so Victoria said you can lock on an iPad to one with kiosk mode. I'm not an expert on iPads, so I presume it's basically you kind of restrict what they can access and where, and then allow them to do stuff once you want them to do stuff. I think certainly in our school, a lot of games get banned sort of on the desktop computers at school. Things get banned. Oh, specialist teaching online. How have you found specialist? Any tips? Do you know what? It's really interesting. When I'm not at school, I tutor kids, and it's been really enlightening doing it on Skype. I have got a laptop. I'm on 2 screens at the moment. I've got a normal screen here and then a laptop that's a touch screen. So I found having 2 screens is invaluable for teaching online, because we can see our faces, and then we've got a shared working screen. So, and I've got a touchscreen laptop, so I will quite happily just move things around that way. So we've got the shared working space, and we still do. I mean, I will share videos with the kids. We'll read things aloud. We've shared quite a lot of apps and websites that do reading. So if a kid wants something that will read out loud for them, but they haven't got MS Office, they've got Open Office or something like that, there are various websites we can use for them so they're equipped then to go on by themselves. What I have found difficult, there's a little girl that I engaged with a couple of weeks ago, and I've said I didn't want to teach her online because she was quite shy, and it just wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been ethical for me to take parents' money. It just wouldn't have sat well with me. So I think you can't always, some kids need that one-to-one, but generally online it's worked okay, because I'm quite talkative, and so you kind of build a bit of a relationship first and make sure that you talk to parents and kids and just communicate with it all, and have a shared screen where you can do working space. I found that's really handy. I'm a Skyper, or I do Zoom a little, but I'm more of a Skyper at the moment. But it's generally working surprisingly well. I've gone from never tutoring online to all my kids just went person online, and I've been very lucky. What were the 4 areas? The 4 areas of special needs are social communication difficulties. Let me just go back to my slide. Cognition and learning. Oh, and I'm having a proper moment now. Cognition and learning, social communication, and language, that's expressing yourself. And then there are physical and sort of impairments. So it might be the sensory needs, so you might have sort of visual impairment or a mobility difficulty with that. And then there's social, emotional and mental health. If you Google, Catherine, SEND Code of Practice 2015 or Special Needs Code of Practice, it's got lots of information about it in there. It's quite a meaty document, but there's lots of information. I think my slides will probably be available anyway if you want them, but you can always ping me a message, like ping me an email or something, or find me on Twitter, and I can just send you them anyway. It's not a problem at all. Is there any other questions? I'm just going to have a little squiz back through the chat. Has anyone else got anything they'd like to ask? Has anyone got any queries at all? Do feel free. Just have a drink. Gosh, we're all quiet. If anyone, if you want to unmute yourselves and ask a question verbally, obviously you don't have to write it in the chat, that's not a problem. You can have a set it so you can't unmute. Allow participants. No? Well, I think what I will do then is one new message. If you could get a teacher to change 3 things in a classroom, what would your top 3 changes be? Oh, processing time. So that's such a good question. If you know a child has any sort of need, what you can do is you can pop a question on the board or ask a question, and some kids, their hands will go straight up. They'll just like, boom, know it. But if you know there's a child who is dead clever, then give them a minute to think about it, or say, I'm going to come back to you. Just say, I know you've got something, I'll give you a minute to think about it. because it just gives them that time. Again, I'm that person. I'm clearly not a total wally because I've got a PhD, but sometimes just finding the words is really hard. And I see it in the kids as well, it's really tricky. And PowerPoints, don't do black and white. It's an absolute mission for kids to read. Pastel background, there's debate as to what colour's the right colour. I like pink, I did pink, I like blue. Sometimes my PowerPoint background colour really does depend on the mood, but it's always pastel, or on the subject and what my pictures, you know, the references are. And have a sans serif font. Which actual font it is, it doesn't matter. Sans serif. And I tend to use at least size 26, just because your slide won't get too crowded then. And another thing, that was 2 things. PowerPoint checklists. Give the kids a checklist so they can see what they need to do. I'm just reading Victoria's comment. I'm you're based in Wales, I guess. I'm always surprised so many teachers use a white whiteboard. Oh, I know. I'm on that. I'm in the process of working on a dyslexia friendly schools and Wiltshire project with the council. I'm evaluating it. I feel like I'm going to go, or I might be hopefully pleasantly surprised. Goodness me, this is like the $64,000 question from S. Sunna. Sorry, my glasses aren't working. S. Sunna. How do we support our students with lockdown catch-up in September? I'd say give them time. Get them to do it. If you're primary school, whatever key stage, little and often. For reading, little and often. I'd say don't labour it. If they are a reluctant reader or a reluctant writer, little and often, little chances for success. And if they're feeling wobbly and school's alien, just get them in the door and get them a drink, get them a cup of tea if they're secondary, if that's okay with your health and safety policy. Give year 10. Oh, I'd say talk to them. Give them time, give them space. We are at our school, I'm not saying at my school that I work at, but I'm sort of involved with it. We're giving them breakout zones, and some of our year 10s have got very, very wobbly home lives. It's just not easy. And it's giving them time and space that it's okay not to be okay, and let them know what's expected. I know this is really hard because we don't know what's expected for year 10, like Eric, what's happening with exams. And I think we need to be as honest as we can, but say no matter what is thrown at us, we will support them as best we can and just keep giving them positive praise. It's so hard because we just don't know what's going to be expected of us in terms of public exams. Yeah, I hope that's been a useful answer. Work in progress. Are there any other questions? Oh, Holden's got his hand up. Is that lower hand? Oh, that's okay. That's no problem. Thank you, message. So I'm just checking there's no more questions in the chat. Are there any more questions? If anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask anything or pop another note in the chat, do feel free. It's not a problem at all. Just give you a minute to type in what you may want to do. But you can see my bookshelf then. It's a bit of an embarrassing bookshelf. That's okay. So what I will say, that's no problem, Caroline. That's okay, Amber. I tweet, I'm at Dr Helen Ross. I'll pop it, Helen Ross, sorry, dyslexic me makes me speak as I write. My Twitter handle is in the chat, so if you want to ask me anything or pop me any messages, feel free to go onto Twitter, and then all my contact details are on there. Hopefully it's been useful, and if you have any more questions, just pop me a message. I will give you a couple of minutes in case there's any other questions, but shortly I will close the meeting and let you go off and have your dinner because it's a Friday night. And thank you everyone for being so amazing. It's been such a privilege to share stuff with you. I've really enjoyed it. So, Diolch. I know that means thank you. I can't remember how to say you're welcome. I did know. I'm sorry, Victoria. Right, so I will love you all and leave you. And thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to pop Chrissy. Yes, Chrissy. I will stop the recording, and then I say pop me a message if you need anything on Twitter. Take care and have a lovely weekend. Look after yourselves.